Alabama holds off LSU 80-73, and what everyone was talking about was Mark Sears not playing a minute in the second half, and Alabama winning this one. We've got Nate Oats' comments, and just when you watch that basketball game on Saturday night, and for a lot of people, if you only have one TV, you're probably locked in on number 6 versus number 1, Tennessee Auburn going on at the same time. But if you multiple TVs, or if you're an Alabama fan, you're watching the Tide battle an LSU team that was playing above their skis, and Sears was 0 points in the first half and then 0 minutes in the second half. When you see that, Brown, your first thought was?
Well, I thought he was hurt, and especially, I knew he didn't start the second half, obviously, and then they start showing him on the bench, and at one point he's wiping his eyes with a towel, and you can see that there appears to have been some emotion in his eyes. And I assumed he was hurt. And then when you see the emotion, kind of the tears in his eyes like that, I feared it was a serious injury.
Yeah, this is Preston Murphy, our video at Next Round Live, for about 2.5 minutes while game action is going on, actually almost having a conversation, consoling him at times.
But normally, Lance, if a guy is hurt, especially if he's seriously hurt, he's not back out in his uniform.
No.
That was when I thought, well, this is awful strange.
Well, this looked a lot like a situation 6 weeks ago where I came on here, and I know you guys were like, I think it's great that Mark Sears can take the second half off. He's not feeling it that day, and his teammates can take over. And I was like, I think it's extremely weird.
He opted out of that one, was the comment.
That was the comment.
I would guarantee you it's the same situation. Whatever the situation is, there has got to be a correlation between what you saw Saturday night and what you saw earlier this season.
He didn't look the same on the bench during that Illinois game, but I don't know what goes on in the locker room. Nate Oats explained afterwards. Cut number 1, Tyler, if you will. This is Nate Oats getting asked about Mark Sears, preseason SEC Player of the Year, All-American, a guy that sometimes is your best offensive weapon, who was 0 for the first half and then didn't play in the second half. This is how Nate answered the question.
I didn't think our second half defense has been very good lately, so we made the point to the guys, we're done starting the same group that starts the game. We're going to start the guys that we think give us the best chance to get a great start in the second half. So we subbed in 2 guys in the starting lineup. Kind of looked at some leverage numbers, plus minus numbers, and kind of challenged a couple guys. And I couldn't be more proud of our guys in the second half. Only give up a .83. Cliff, I didn't think he was bringing it. They had a kid at 15 rebounds. Cliff was not rebounding like he needed to. Wasn't playing as hard as we'd have liked, and he ends up going out and playing extremely hard in the second half, had a great attitude on the bench, and ends up winning the hard hat after not starting the second half. So I kind of just told them guys that's how life goes. Sometimes there's a little adversity, and you got to challenge it well, and I was super proud of the way Cliff handled it. So, and I'll just say this, and I'm not going to talk anymore about the playing time stuff. We went with the guys in the second half that thought it gave us the best chance to win this game. And we won the game, and our defense was significantly better than the first half, and we haven't done that very often this year. So that's all I'm going to say about that stuff.
I think that tells you all you need to know. There's something deeper. There's something going on. Like, for him not to reference Mark's name at all.
And he did Cliff Amore's.
Yeah. I mean, he would say, hey, look, Mark just had an off night. We love Mark. You've seen what he's able to do for this university for the last couple of years. For where we want to get as a team goal, we've got to have Mark a big part of that. For him to completely omit his name, there's something deeper going on.
And because he said a couple of guys, and then he brings Cliff Amore up by name.
Couple is what, 2?
2, and then praises him. There were 2 guys that started the game, didn't start the second half. It is not hard to figure out who he's talking about there. And then praises Cliff Amore's response to it. Is it negative about Mark Sears' response, but also doesn't even mention him, right? And then was kind of asked about it, and that was the second half of the answer there. I'm done talking about playing time, but basically the guys that are going to play are the guys that are going to win the game.
I thought maybe he had been injured before the final play. He had been banged around at the goal. It was on the court, and a guy fell on top of him. I thought maybe he was injured.
That's something definitely he would have pointed out.
He did not mention that, and his mom, Mark's mom, on Facebook says Mark was not injured and not sick.
Yeah, she went Brenda Warner.
Yeah.
She did.
If you don't remember that reference, Brenda Warner, Kurt Warner's wife, when he was getting criticized on local, I think it was a St. Louis talk show called in. And
I do remember that.
it became a really, really big deal, which I assume some of these posts are going to become a pretty big deal.
Well, I mean, Mark Sears' mom, who is a social media, I'm not going to say social media influencer. She describes herself as a digital creator.
Who doesn't these days?
I know. There are a lot of those out there. Has a verified Facebook account as a digital creator, and very publicly was discussing this last night. We shared some of it on social media. Many of you did not like that.
She was defending her. She was defending her son.
We shared it without any sort of commentary, just that she's expressing herself. She was clearing up that he was not hurt.
I mean, it's already shared. I don't know what the big deal with that is.
I don't either. Because it's not positive about some people's team. People are going to get mad, and I get that. That's part of being a fan. But we shared it because she's openly talking about what's going on. She's a public figure.
Yeah, the big takeaway, not injured, not sick.
Not injured, not sick. Was having a bad shooting night. Did not get an opportunity to finish the game was her explanation.
She got deep. Who's the enemy? Is Nate Oats the enemy?
I don't know. That was a little unclear to me. I don't think that's what she meant by that.
Ironically, it's a Bible verse. I mean, not ironically, it's a Bible verse. And it was yesterday, ironically, the verse that was preached on at my church. It was weird. She brought it up on Facebook, and it was the sermon.
Well, maybe God's trying to get to you.
So maybe that's why you shared it,
That's right. Maybe through Mark Sears benching in the second half, God's trying to get your attention.
But I did think it was.
Don't box God.
And that's why I don't think this is like a moment. I think something, and look, this is just speculation on my part, but if you go back to the Illinois game, to what you saw Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, for her to be that emotional and to I mean, I can call it oversharing. She can do what she wants. I would hope as a parent that if I was in that situation, I wouldn't overshare like that. You never know. I mean, it's her kid. Whatever she feels is in the best interest of Mark. I've always been, I just don't know what you gain, whether you're a brother, a husband, a wife, a parent, by going to bat for your kid through social media.
Yeah,
it never works out.
Mark still has to go do the work, and Mark still has to deal with everything in the locker room.
And she's going to still want to come to these games, and now she's going to be a bigger focal point. I mean, they show her plenty on a lot of the broadcast, but she's going to be a bigger focal point now moving forward.
In the actual game, Alabama does hold off LSU 80-73. Aden Holloway continues to be really good shooting the basketball, 19 points. Mo Diabate continues to do it at both ends of the floor, 14 points. But the shift actually started in the starting lineup. Chris Youngblood got to start over LeBaron Philon, and Youngblood scored a lot of points early on, ended up with 13 points, and Alabama gets the win. It's only the fourth time all year they were out-rebounded. They got out-rebounded by LSU.
Well, the chess kid had 18 boards. You heard Nate reference his 15. Yep. It was actually 18, and maybe it was 15 and a half. But, if there would have been a change in the starting lineup, we kind of talked about this, Diabate for Stevenson. Seemed like maybe that's the direction they would go. I do think that this staff had the luxury of playing not a very good LSU team in Tuscaloosa. Like, with all of the internal drama that seemed like was going on, if they would have played, 3/4 of the league that night, they would have lost.
And that's what I think. Nate Oats, I think, knew he could win that game with Holloway and Philon playing at guard. And Mark Sears could sit and watch that, and the rest of the team could look and say, if Mark Sears is going to sit a half, anybody on this team could sit a half. And if that message is received, you'll look back on this as a non-issue. In fact, you might look back on this as a very big positive for Alabama basketball. If that message is not received, then you got a lot of guys that aren't paying close enough attention, and that becomes a bigger issue.
Well, here's my question. It all comes down to me now. How does Mark Sears respond to the challenge, right? Because this is something that could, depending on Mark and Nate's relationship, could send Mark into the wrong direction for the rest of the year. And I'll ask you guys this question. Without Mark Sears on this team playing Mark Sears-like basketball, is it a Final Four team in your opinion?
I'm going to disagree with what you just said there, though. I don't think Nate Oats does it if he thinks it would send Mark Sears in the wrong direction.
Did he look like he was in a good direction on the bench?
He didn't, but that's in the moment. Okay, so I don't think Nate Oats does this if he doesn't think Mark Sears could handle it, and Mark Sears, by being benched, is sending a message to this entire team. Nate Oats is a exceptionally good basketball coach. You don't get to this point and bench a guy that has just scored 2,500 points and is the leading active scorer in the NCAA if you don't think he can handle it.
Well, we'll see what direction this thing goes. I mean, for him not to reference Mark, again, I thought was very, very interesting. Look, he's not Nick Saban. If Nick Saban was doing some kind of messaging just based on the resume, you'd be like, okay, maybe this makes sense. I am going to be fascinated moving forward for a couple of reasons. I mean, one of the reasons Sears is still playing is because of his height. If Sears was 6'3", he'd be in the NBA right now.
That is correct.
And so now I think everything is going to be magnified what Sears does moving forward, because I think NBA scouts are trying to figure out where this guy belongs. Is he an overseas guy? Is he a guy that can be on an NBA roster? And if he is going to be on an NBA roster, it's going to be because of the talent, but they don't want any dysfunction at all. So this is a really interesting, and it's not even a one-off to me. Again, I think there's a correlation between this and Illinois, and that's pure speculation.
Yeah, I'm not going that far. I would tell you, I bet you Mississippi State Wednesday night, Mark Sears plays as good a basketball game as you've seen him play, and Nate Oats is effusive in his praise about how Mark handled this situation.
That seems like the way it would play out. I can't believe you guys don't think there's correlation between Illinois and this. That is just too strange.
Correlation, define what you mean by that.
I mean, I thought the body language against Illinois, it was like, I didn't have it tonight. I was letting my teammates take over. That's extremely weird. You never see an alpha ever do that. And I know I got criticized by a lot of people for saying that. It's just facts of the matter. And then
I just say it was early in the season. It was a great, if that's truly the way it played out, and I can only take everybody at what they say, that is a great leadership moment. Listen, I know you want to put me in the game because I'm Mark Sears and I led us to the Final Four last year.
Great players play their way out of funks.
But you don't have to play me tonight. Let the guys who are hot play me.
Never heard that in my life, though, ever.
Yeah.
And now you get this. And then you get Oates not talking about it. And then you get Sears' mom going public. This is not a one-off. There is no way Sears' mom has that kind of venom shooting all that out with this only.
Venom. I think venom's a bit of an
I mean, we did see enemy a lot. I mean, I know it's a biblical verse, but I mean, there's got to be a point to it.
Yeah, but the enemy wasn't necessarily. I don't think she was directing that at Nate Oats or Alabama basketball.
I'm not, but she was directed at somebody.
Yeah.
Well, just the situation.
Yeah, I'm just saying, whatever it was, it seemed like something was built up to have that many posts and have that much interaction with fans.
Yeah. Is there, and Nate would never throw a player under the bus, right? It doesn't seem like he would throw people under the bus.
That's an interesting devil. He's honest about his players, though, and he will call them out if they don't play well. Now, you could call that being thrown under the bus or being honest.
I know, but let me finish my thought.
Okay.
Him not playing 1 minute in the second half, though, that there are situations in the history of sports when a player has been told, hey, you're not starting the second half, or you're not starting the game, and the player doesn't react exactly right, then you end up sitting if you don't react the way the coach wants you to react. I don't know if that has anything to do with this. It'll be interesting to see what Nate says next, how Mark responds. But for him not to play a minute in the second half, like Cliff didn't play well, brought up Cliff. He didn't play well in the first half.
He won the hard hat.
He came back in and won the hard hat in the second half. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Cliff got a chance to correct a bad first half by playing in the second half.
I just would be fascinating, and I know we'll get to Auburn, Tennessee in a little bit, if this would have been Tennessee in Coleman Coliseum. I mean, I go back to your point. I think that Nate and his staff knew more than likely, without Mark, we can still win this game.
Yeah, I think they knew this is a tie ball game, but I am about to peel some paint and get some attention. And the best way I can get attention right now and maybe get this team, because let's say, as well as Alabama has played at times over the last couple of games, and they've played very, very well at Kentucky. That was a tremendous win. And then they came home and beat Vanderbilt. That was, look, this Vanderbilt team just continues to stack good wins.
Always want to play Vanderbilt midweek, not on Saturdays.
That's right, or in the Mem Gym, apparently. But Nate Oats has expressed frustration with his team, especially after that Ole Miss game. And even again, was it going into the Vanderbilt game where they had to extend practice? He's like, I saw some of the same stuff that snuck into the Ole Miss practice, and we weren't going to finish that way.
I've said it several times. He is coaching this team extremely hard.
He is coaching this team extremely hard. And if you've got your team leader, who is an All-American candidate, who probably, and let's call it like it is making more NIL money than anybody in that locker room, and his teammates know it, right? If you've got that guy and he's not living up to your standard, number one, you're blessed that you've got a deep enough roster that you can do something about that. There are a lot of rosters in America that couldn't bench a Mark Sears in a second half. Yeah, a lot of them.
But what is the standard? It's not having an off night. Guys have off nights.
But if it's an off night, Lance, that leads, like, I can deal with you scoring 0 points, right? People miss shots.
Yeah.
But if you're scoring 0 points and not getting back on defense and not playing hard enough on defense, that's pure effort. You can't allow a poor offensive night to affect the way you play on the defensive end. And if that's what was, in fact, the case, Nate Oats preaches about that all the time. And there is no better preacher. And Nate Oats can preach all he wants about that. taking his best player and putting on the bench for a half in a tie ball game is better than any sermon he could ever preach.
Nate recently on one of the sound bites we played on with some show in the last 10 days praised how Mark's improved defensively.
That's right.
Yep.
But again, you can improve all you want defensively if your poor offensive night is affecting your defensive performance. And maybe that is your correlation, Lance, that you're talking about. Maybe that's what happened with Illinois, and it just didn't get magnified because Alabama, I mean, they won that game going away against Illinois.
Pretty comfortably.
Yeah, so it didn't get magnified, but maybe this was Nate Oats saying, hey, you're doing the same thing you're doing against Illinois. And you know, we let it go. I'm not going to let it go. I can't let it go in conference play.
Back to your point on, and I forgot what your point was now on, what would Alabama be without Sears? They ain't winning 4 games in the NCAA tournament.
No, I don't think they could win a national championship without
and this is strange, but it's almost like what you got with it, and I know it was more magnified because you got a lot fewer games, but Jalen Milroe. Like Alabama wasn't going to do anything football-wise as far as winning championships and getting to a postseason without Jalen Milroe playing his best.
Yeah, but I would say the reason you'd go to extreme measures is because you know you can't win a Final Four without Mark Sears. And if I let him not live up to the standard, but I still reward him with playing time, I'm not getting my team's attention and I'm not getting his attention. And I think Nate Oats is like, I mean, I can risk this against LSU or we can let this be a problem the rest of the year. And if it's a problem the rest of the year, you're not winning a Final Four anyway.
Well, Nate Oats told us something is definitely deeper than we know about by not mentioning Mark Sears.